Okay, speak on that topic. Actually, she's somewhat related to Shabbos Kestenbaum and our relationship with the outside world. So, actually, the parsha we start off, the Jewish people had beat Emor, and Moab was a little nervous. Jewish people coming around, and they're going to start up with us. So they wanted to make a preemptive strike. So instead of sending a bunch of missiles to Israel, what they did is they hired Bilam to go and curse the Jewish people. And as we know, Hashem didn't want him to go. His donkey saw an angel and spoke to Bilam, said not to go. And he went anyway. And he turns out instead of cursing the Jewish people, he made brachos. He blessed the Jewish people. So I would like to discuss a few of the blessings that Bilam made and what they mean and what we can learn from them. And actually, it does have something related to do with our relationship to the RNC and the DNC for that matter. So one of the things that Bilam said when he was trying to curse the Jewish people is Kimerosh, Tzurim, Erenu, Umigvos, Asherenu, Hein Am Levadad Yishkon, Uvagoyim Lo Yischashav. He says, from the beginning I see them as mountain peaks and I hold them as hills, and this is the part of the bracha I want to discuss. They're a nation which dwells alone, Uvagoyim Lo Yischashav, and they don't reckon with the nations. The Targum Yonasan says on this, first of all, the bracha is obvious, that the Jewish people are a nation that stands alone. I don't think we need to look around too much to see how true that is. As much as we have, sometimes this group helps us, sometimes that group helps us. At the end of the day, we're a nation that stands alone, and the only being that protects us is Hashem. You know, all the other nations, they have an angel that is appointed to take care of them. Whereas the Jewish people are directly taken care of by Hashem, taken care of by God. Now this is appropriate as the 3 weeks are coming when we mourn the destruction of the temple. The Targum Yonasan says in this pasuk that it's not just defining the Jewish people, but in the merit of the Jewish people dwelling alone and being separate, that is what's going to bring the final redemption. That is when Mashiach will come. That's the zchus. That's the merit we need. The merit we need to bring Mashiach is that the Jewish people dwell alone. Am levadad yishkon. In fact, Rabbi Chanan Wasserman points out that that's why we merited to leave Egypt. Right? Even though the Jews did many sins, they were separate. They lived in their own place. They didn't adopt the Egyptian names. They didn't adopt the Egyptian clothes and whatnot. But when we realize that the Jewish people are special and that we are not influenced by the nations of the world, that's when Mashiach comes. We've discussed this a lot. Rabbi Chanan quotes this pasuk, famous verse. It's a chumash if you want. I won't be using it, but if you want to use it. Famous verse in Yechezkel and Ezekiel. It says that, I'll read the pasuk first and I'll talk about it. It's very important. This is something that we all can improve on. Va'ola al ruchacham hayu losia asher atam aimrim negech agoyim k'mishpachos haratzos l'sharis eitz v'aven. Let's say that you'll want to say, we're going to be like the nations, like the different peoples of the lands, to worship wood and stone. Chayaninu uma Hashem Elokim im lo b'yad chazak v'zor netuya uvechema shpucha emlech aleichem. As I live, declares Hashem, I'll reign over you with a strong hand and with an outstretched arm and with overflowing fury. I will take you out from the nations. I'll gather you from the lands of Asher Nefotzah Sambam, which you are spread out to, b'yad chazaka v'zor netuya, with a outstretched arm, ubechema shvucha, and with great anger. The psukim say, hello, enjoy some cholent. The psukim say, the more, if we have a havamina, if we say, hey, you know what? I think we should be like the nations of the world. Let's adopt their customs. Let's adopt their ideology. Let's adopt what they do. Let's learn from them. Hashem says, no, that is not going to happen. If you try to do that, then I will make sure it doesn't happen with an outstretched arm and with outpouring anger. This is what Rabbi Chanan Wasserman quotes. He says, in his time, the same thing was happening as happens now in the United States. The United States, Baruch Hashem, is a very accepting place. As Rav Moshe Feinstein famously wrote, it is a Medina Shel Chesed, a country of kindness. However, with that comes a danger. The danger is that when we become too comfortable, we want to assimilate. Assimilation means that we take our values, we'll talk about what Jewish values is, but we take our values and we abandon them because there's a Yetzer Hara, there is a Jewish sickness that has been true through generations, but it's especially strong now. The Jewish sickness is an inferiority complex, that we're not confident in our own values and confident when we believe and we feel, whether it's subconsciously or consciously, that we need to adopt the values of the secular world around us. And Rabbi Chanan Wasserman from this pasuk says, if you try to do that, if you try to adopt the non-Jewish culture and you try to abandon Judaism, Hashem says, I will not let that happen. I will pour out divine wrath. And Rabbi Chanan writes, that's when anti-Semitism gets hotter. And that's when it gets worse. That's when it gets more intense. When the Jewish people abandon the uniqueness of being Jewish and want to be like everybody else, then Hashem says, I'm not going to let that happen, and anti-Semitism increases. Rabbi Nathan Shore, whose yahrzeit was recently, I remember he used to say that if we forget that we're Jews, there'll be a force there to remind us. It's true. And Rabbi Chanan wrote this in the 1920s, 1930s, and he predicted, he looked around at that time in Europe, and he said that based on the assimilation that's going on in Europe, I predict, unfortunately, there will be a great calamity which is going to happen to the Jewish people. And of course, Rabbi Chanan Wasserman himself was murdered in the Holocaust. He also, the Beis Halevi writes, we say in Havdalah, Hamavli ben Kodesh ben Or Lechoshech, and Sheish ben Hamavli ben Kodesh ben Or Lechoshech ben Yisrael La'amim. And it says, just like the light and darkness are totally separate, can't mix them, totally separate, so too Yisrael and the Amim, the Jewish people in the secular world, we're totally separate. And if we try to mix, we're going to be forced back apart. Now, it's been a silver lining of what's happening in Israel, that there's lots and lots of people that had no connection to Hashem at all, and they started waking up and having a connection to Hashem, and really solidifying their commitment to Torah and mitzvahs because of what happened. Because sometimes, if we don't wake up ourselves, Hashem sends a very strong force to remind us. And this is something we should be proud of. We should be proud of being Jewish. And Chabad is very good at this. They're very proud of being Jewish. Remember, we had all these songs about proud of being Jewish. Sometimes we're like embarrassed, what we do. I know when I used to stop at a rest stop, driving from Baltimore to New Jersey, and I had to say Asher Yotzer, saying the bracha after going to the bathroom. It's like a little embarrassing. You look like you're standing there and you're like a crazy person, and you are talking to yourself or talking to the wall, and people are like looking at you like, oh, what's this guy doing? It's very strange. They used to have a shtick, I heard, back in the days when they had payphones. The people would like pick up a payphone and establish one answer and like pretend they were talking to somebody and start bowing. So many times I was privileged to take my Yeshiva, Aaron Feldman, give him a ride. I remember one time we stopped in the rest stop. He gets out with his frock and his Hamburg, big white beard. He uses the restroom. He comes out and he stands in the middle of the restroom and makes Asher Yatzar like he was in the middle. He probably had as much kavanah for that Asher Yatzar that maybe I do during the Elul of Yom Kippur. Just standing there in like the middle of the John Fenwick rest stop or whatever it was, like his hands like this, face down, saying Asher Yatzar with all the kavanah, all the intent in the world, thanking Hashem that his body works. He said, if the non-Jews know, it's such a beautiful bracha when you think about it. We talk about how with this human being is composed of these two opposites. We have a neshama, which is this spiritual essence of ourselves, and we have a body, which is totally physical, and they're opposites, and they're combined together. That's why it's a mafli lasos. The Ramon says it's a pella, it's a wonderment that we could exist like that. And every time we use the restroom, we mention that and we thank Hashem that we're healthy. And so many things could go wrong in the human body, but Hashem protects us. And I think he told me once that a non-Jew asked him what he was doing once when he was saying Asher Yatzar, and he told him, I'm making a blessing for the bathroom. He says, wow, you Jews are really a unique people, that you can take the most mundane task, going to the bathroom, and you can sanctify it. Right? You think about it. What other religion has that? You're sanctifying going to the bathroom, thanking Hashem, everything came out okay. You think about that. That's an unbelievable thing. That's what kind of people is like that in the world? Only the Jews are like that. And what we tend to do is we tend to forget about that. We don't realize how special we are and how beautiful that is. And what's more, we have a Yetzer Hara that it's more important to go and watch football on Friday and eat nachos and whatever. Pick your activity or secular ideology that you would like to adopt. So many Jews have left the beauty of Judaism to go to ideas that they think would save the world: communism, feminism, all the isms. But we have a beautiful connection to Hashem and a beautiful way to live. This time of the year, what's Menashe doing? Menashe comes to Kol and studies Torah. My nephew, he's still in yeshiva. He's learning Torah. It's in July. What's everyone else doing? So I looked online. Given this is a very extreme example, but it really comes from the same source. They have there's a new TikTok challenge, right, where you put a penny in a socket and you see how many sparks you can make. Right, that's one. That's what the secular world is doing right now. There's also one where a person lies down, puts cereal and milk in their mouth, and another person eats it. And there's another thing. There's the Tide Pod challenge that was still going on. And then there's a blackout challenge on TikTok where you film yourself choking yourself until you pass out, which I'm sure Dr. Pinellas can tell you that's a very healthy thing to do. And then this is a new one. There's the Sleepy Chicken challenge where you cook chicken in NyQuil. And you film yourself doing all of this. Now, again, this is all very extreme, but what's my point? What? Kids on TikTok, this is what they're doing. I'm saying you have Menashe here, who's going to study Torah to find out the will of Hashem, to get close to Hashem, and there's other kids his age that are spending their summers cooking chicken in NyQuil. Now, the difference... NyQuil. Yeah. So Dr. Pinellas also told me to do once when I had a cold. You put NyQuil in the chicken soup. No, but my point is why are they doing it? Because they want to be famous, and they have to think of something crazy to be famous. That's all it is, right? Obviously, this is very extreme, but the goal, the value, is the same. Just they're expressing it in an extreme way. In the secular world, what's the supreme value? To become rich and famous. That's like what you're living for your whole life, right? That would be like the greatest thing ever for someone to be rich and famous. What does a Jew live for? What's his biggest value? His biggest value is to be an Eved Hashem, servant of God, to get close to Hashem, to study Torah, to spend his free time studying Torah, not cooking chicken and NyQuil. My point is that we have such a beautiful way to live, and it's the right way to live, because that's what Hashem wants to do. And unfortunately, for generations, this is a generational sickness of the Jewish people. We have a strong desire, a strong Yetzer Hara, to be like the nations of the world. We want to fit in. But if we sit and stop and think about it, well, how could we want anything to do with this culture? There's nothing. It's nothing. There's nothing here. Absolutely nothing here. And that's what the bracha of Bilam was. Am levadat yishkon. They are a nation that dwells apart, dwells separately. And the Targum Yonasan is saying, when we really live that way, when we live as a community separate, and we live as individuals, and we extricate those desires from ourselves of wanting to be like the secular nations, that's when Mashiach will come. Okay, so that's the first bracha. The third bracha, famous bracha. Matovu Olecha Yaakov Mishkenosecha Yisrael. How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. Can't tell you how many times we said that verse in Hebrew and English in different presentations and performances in Hebrew school at Sons of Israel. So the Orach Chaim, what's the double wording here? How goodly are your tents, O Jacob, your dwelling places, O Israel. What's with tents to Jacob and dwelling places Israel? So the Orach Chaim HaKadosh says Yaakov is talking about the people that work for a living. So he says they can't spend their entire day learning, they have to earn a livelihood. So that's why it says they have to study Torah in tents, because tents are a temporary structure. So they have to study Torah, but they don't get the chance to do it as much. So they study in tents, which are temporary. Whereas the people who are able to study Torah full time, that's going Mishkenosecha Yisrael. The point is that every person, whether they have 15 minutes a day to study Torah, or they have 8 hours a day, or 14 hours a day to study Torah, studies Torah on their level. Everyone is different. Everyone has a chiyuv. Really, there is a chiyuv, a responsibility that a person, person's really required to study Torah the entire day. But what are you going to do? You have to make a living. You have to support yourself. So you're exempt from that chiyuv. But whatever time you have to spend that time studying Torah. So Matovu Olecha Yaakov is going on the people who work for a living, and Mishkenosecha Yisrael is talking about the people who are able to devote their entire days to study Torah. So Rav Shach, he talks about that in Europe, you would have one shul where there were like different tables. I forgot the name of the city, specific city he was talking about, but I'm sure it was true amongst many cities in Europe. You had one table where there were people who were studying full time, and they were like learning in-depth ideas in the Jerusalem Talmud, very complex stuff. And then you had other people who worked the entire day, they weren't very learned, and they were studying the Siddur. They were just learning about the Siddur. And they were all in the same base medrash. You have the whole Jewish people, everyone's on a different level, and they're all studying something different. Because everyone's studying what they're supposed to study. Everyone's doing what they're supposed to do. You know, we where did I see it? I forgot to write this down. I forgot what the source was. But someone says I was going to mention it on Sunday. It says, "Ezehu asher samech b'chalko." Who's happy? Who's the wealthy person? Someone who's happy with what he has. So I think this was from Rav Yonasan Eibeshitz. He says, being happy with what you have means your talents. People think that, if I was smarter, then I would study Torah. Right? Then I could be a Talmid Chacham, I would be able to learn Reb Chaim, I could learn the Ketzos, I could learn all these complicated Svarim. He says, no. Ezo Asher Samech Mechalko, you have to be happy with your talents. Hashem gave some people great intelligence, and He gave them a lot of time. Hashem gave other people not so great intelligence. But that doesn't that doesn't exempt someone from studying Torah on their level. You can't say that, if I was smarter and I had the whole day to learn, then I would be able to learn. But I work all day, I have a long day, and I'm not that bright. I can't study Torah. No, you study Torah on your level. Maybe it's learning a few Mishnayos. Maybe it's learning a little bit of Chumash. Maybe it's learning the Siddur. Maybe just learning Aleph Beis. That's also studying Torah, just learning the letters of the alphabet. He says, Hasamech B'chalko means that with your strengths, you study Torah and you do what you're supposed to do. Because really, Hashem gave each of us exactly the talents that we need to accomplish our mission. Every person in the world has a different mission they have to fulfill. What is that? That you have to figure out yourself. But Hashem gave us each exactly what we need in order to fulfill, in order to accomplish in this world what we're supposed to accomplish. We're not lacking anything that we need to be able to do that. The question is if we're going to do it or not. So a person should never think, I can't do what this guy does, therefore I'm lacking. No, he has to do what he has to do, I have to do what I have to do. There was studying Torah, no matter how much Torah it is, that's really why we're special. That's why we're special as a Jewish people. When we study Torah, we're using our mind, and our mind is the essence of our being, to understand what Hashem wants. So we're using the essence of our being, our mind, to come in contact with the mind of Hashem. This is the greatest mitzvah that there is. Every word of Torah that we learn, that we're doing right now, as we're speaking, that's greater than fulfilling all of the 613 mitzvahs, all of the 613 commandments. And there are crazy stories about how much the Jewish people how much they gave up for Torah, how much they sacrificed to study Torah. I think it was before World War I in Russia. This from Ephraim Waxman. There was an edict that they had to shut off all the lights, all the candles. It was during a war or something, and they shut off the candles, and there was some rabbi who couldn't handle it. He had to learn, and he put the candle on. And as the Russians were taking him out to shoot him, he said, "Can you just give me 15 more minutes before you kill me? I have to figure out this Rambam." Like, that's the only thing that was on his mind at that time. There were people, they sacrificed. Their commitment to Torah was such, it was just unreal. It was something that really struck me. He's talking about people on different levels. It's common that you have people at a wedding. Sometimes between there's a lot of downtime at weddings sometimes when the families are taking pictures or whatever. So a lot of people speak about Torah. They talk about Torah. So you've been learning in yeshiva for a while, so you have topics you can talk about. And Moshe Chaim and I were just talking about Amir al-Akum the other day, different things. So we've learned in yeshiva for a few years, so we now have things to talk about. So I was once at a wedding, and there were two people sitting next to me, and they had just started learning in about Tshuva yeshiva. They weren't religious for that long, and they wanted to talk about Torah. So what were they doing? All they were doing was they were saying the back and forth of the Gemara. They were just saying like, Abaye says this, Rava says this. And it was like such a simple thing that you could almost make fun of, and I realized it was so beautiful because they just wanted to talk about Torah, and this is all that they could do. This is all that they were able to do. And it was beautiful. They were trying their best. There was once a wealthy man. He went to Rav Shmuel Salant in Yerushalayim. I think we're talking about the early 1900s, late 1800s. He wanted to give money to different yeshivas and kollel in Yerushalayim. In fact, everyone there was very, very poor. And this wealthy man, when he was speaking to Rosh Shmuel Salant, the young Torah scholar came in and started talking to Rosh Shmuel Salant. And this wealthy man was very offended. How could you ignore me to talk to this person? So he walked out. So people went to this wealthy man. He said, I want you to see who Rosh Shmuel Salant was speaking with. They took the wealthy man to this kollel guy's house, and they looked in his window, and they saw him and his 7 children sitting around. And for dinner, he took off a little piece of bread, dipped it in olive oil, and gave it to all the children. That was their whole dinner. After they all benched, he said they benched with such kavana, with closeness to Hashem. After that, each member of the family took out something to learn. The father took out his Gemara, the middle kids were learning Chumash, and the smallest kid was learning Aleph Beis. And for an hour and a half, they were all studying Torah, the whole family. And then the man put his kids to bed. This wealthy man was so impressed with his family, he went to Rosh Shmuel Salant and he said, I want to be able to support this family, to help this guy out. He's so poor. I want to make him, try to help him. So Rosh Shmuel Salant said, okay, you can try. Go speak to him. He went to this kollel guy. He says, please let me support you. Let me help you study Torah. I can help you. He says, what do I need help? I have everything I want. I have everything I need. And he was legitimately happy. All he wanted in life, right? We're talking about secular values versus Jewish values. To him, Jewish values means coming close to Hashem. He doesn't need physical comforts. That's the farthest thing from his mind. It's like irrelevant. It's like, what does he need it for? What does he need? He needs to have his family and they study Torah together. That's what's important to him. Someone told me, also from a refined waxman, he said, where did you hear this from? I forgot who he said he heard this from. But I guess there was some town in Russia. There's a moil who goes around Russia doing brissim. And it came to a certain town, and all the Jews of the town, nobody knew anything there. I forgot the city. He named the city. And they would all come to shul. Everyone from the town would come to shul. Except nobody knew anything. So they didn't know how to daven. So he asked, he's like, what are you guys doing? You don't know how to daven. Why do you come to shul? He says, we don't know how to pray, but the least we can do is come to shul. So they go to shul. They felt like that's something they could do. Point is, everyone's on their level. Everyone has different talents and abilities, has a different level of a knowledge base. But the common denominator amongst all Jews is that we live to be servants of Hashem. We live to get close to Hashem, and that's all that matters to us. Everything else, it's just a distraction. The honor. Right, a wealthy fellow from America wanted to start a kollel in Israel, and he asked my yeshiva, maybe you can get Reb Chaim Kanievsky to lead the kollel. So Reb Chaim Kanievsky spent his entire day studying Torah. And my yeshiva went up to him and asked him, and he smiled at him. He said, no, thank you. And he found out later, Reb Chaim Kanievsky was getting offers every other day to lead some kollel or yeshiva, but he's not interested. He just wanted to study Torah. That's all he wants to do. Just get close to Hashem. Obviously, certain people, they should be doing that. They should.
David, the Rabbi Shulman spoke to you.
Yeah.
I said I need larger print, a few lines for the Gemara.
Right.
And a larger print for the special bracha.
Right, I'm going to get that.
Okay.
And that's
what I need.
Right. After the surgery, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, no, I'm doing this before the surgery. I'm doing July 29th.
Okay, I'll get it by then.
It's going to be that Monday.
Right. We're saying that the Jewish people are special and unique, and we shouldn't worry. We shouldn't be like the nations of the world. This time of the year, I'll talk a little bit about, before we finish, a little bit about the 3 weeks which are coming up, Shavuos B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av, which are happening very soon. It's very interesting that these holidays, these days, they always come out in July and August. July and August are the 2 months of the year that are named after, coincidentally, the Roman emperors, Julius Caesar and Augustus. Very interesting, because this is a time of year where the power of Esav was the ancestor of Rome, and it's during these times of the year where his values, the spirit in the air, is very powerful. And what he stood for is exactly the opposite of what the Jewish people stood for. I hope to speak about this in upcoming weeks, but Rome was famous for...
We all know what Rome was famous for.
famous for a lot of things, but it really, what it boiled down to, if you boil it down to one thing, it was self-aggrandizement, power, human power, the power of the individual, right? Build massive roads, massive buildings, strength as gladiators. It was that the human being should be powerful. The Jewish people, the opposite. No, we're here to serve Hashem.
I went to Rome a long time ago. It's really massive.
But they all did it to glorify themselves. And nowadays you have institutions which really are they are the offshoot of Rome.
You should see the Colosseum.
We built it. It was built with Jewish slaves.
It was? No kidding.
Yep.
I didn't know that.
So on Shavasar B'Tammuz, what happened? There were 5 tragedies that happened. The 5th one is what we're familiar with. The walls of Jerusalem were breached by the Romans. Also, that's why we're fasting this Wednesday, I believe it is. There was an idol that was placed in the temple. There was a fellow Apostomos, he burnt the Torah. This was Shavasar B'Tammuz was also the day that they stopped bringing the Tamid sacrifice. And also, it was the day, the Tamid sacrifice is the one that the sacrifice we brought in the morning and the evening. That's why we daven Shachar and Mincha for that sacrifice. And also, it was the day that Moshe broke the tablets when the Jewish people sinned with the golden calves.
Right.
So during the 3 weeks, we don't have weddings, we don't listen to music, we don't shave.
You don't shave, you don't cut your hair.
Right, and we don't make a Shechianu, we don't make a blessing of Shechianu. So, because we're mourning, this time of the year isn't just, we're not mourning only the physical base of Mikdash was destroyed, but really this whole battle between Rome and the Jewish people, this is a battle that's been going all the way back since Yaakov and Esav, and it's still going on, and it's the battle that we've been discussing until now, the battle of secular values versus Jewish values. Am levadod yishkon. And how do we rebuild the temple? We rebuild the temple when we commit to Jewish values of living to be a servant of Hashem, and we don't become seduced with the generational sickness of wanting to be like the secular world around us. That's when the Targum Yonasan says the base of Mikdash will be rebuilt, because we're not just mourning about the physical temple, but we're mourning about our spiritual exile and the low spiritual level of the world. And the way we bring it back? The way we bring it back is by recommitting ourselves, whatever level we're on, to committing to Hashem, whether it's sitting and learning the Yerushalmi, like Mark Umansky, or just opening up a Chumash and reading it in English. We can all do our part,
Well, that's why
and we'll finish here.
I'm doing